Good day, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Medtech Business Academy, sponsored by your Medtech experts. I am fortunate to be joined today by my panel of colleagues, Scott Alexander, Mike Sperduti, and Barbara Strain. Thank you all. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, for today's episode, we are going to be talking about Charles Darwin. Not actually, okay? But we're going to be talking about a concept that Charles Darwin made prescient, and that is the concept of evolution, right? Evolution is around us everywhere we look. Evolution is always happening. However, sometimes in our industry, it doesn't feel like we're evolving, but we are. And what is the evolution that we want to focus on at this moment as we talk about this in the middle of 2025? It is the idea of a centralized buying decision-making process. And what do I mean by that? Well, throughout the dawn of time, as it relates to medtech, decisions were made decentralized. They were made at the local level. They were made almost exclusively by end users and the whims of their wants and needs. Well, as we've seen throughout probably the last really 20 years-ish, 25 years, Barbara would probably like to say it's been a little bit longer, but let's talk about in the reality of how long that's really been prescient. It's been about 20, 25 years that we've had this evolution to now where buying decisions are being made centralized. Value analysis committees, supply chain management, some sort of committee-based decision, not just on the whims of an end user any longer, much to the chagrin of those clinical end users. But that is the process that we live in today. So as we keep evolving, we aren't going to devolve. This isn't going to be, despite the efforts of and the wants of many people, we're not going to turn back the clock anytime soon. That clock is spinning. So therefore, if we are at a position of centralized buying decision making, you have to be thinking as an organization, how do you have a strong marketing component and a marketing strategy and a value proposition strategy that sales can then follow? Marketing is the strategist today. It is not the support mechanism that it used to be. It is the leading strategy provider. Sales needs to follow. In a well-functioning, well-effective organization, sales follows that. So that's a little bit of a different thought. Scott, you already have your thoughts that you want to add.
I was just going to say, just so all listeners know, I did not pick this topic. So
your mom put it into
my mom. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, your mom.
She listener supported from Heather Alexander.
It was in the press box. Go ahead.
She basically said, if you don't, then she's gonna break it easy. Actually, I think Mike, you had some great insight. You kicked it off when we were talking about this topic earlier. Do you want to weigh in on your thoughts of like the sales perspective and kind of we can work back into the marketing side?
Yeah, sure. So, I think there's been a monumental shift in the sales process. And even more importantly, everybody always talks about sales process or sales strategy. I think the way to really look at it is, what's the buyer's process and what's the buyer's strategy? Because if you understand how people are making their buying decisions, then you can actually formulate your sales process to meet that process. And the people that do that more effectively are going to sell more. So I think, to the point of the change, it's a radical change. Before, the age of digital, before the age of the internet, and before the age of AI, information scarcity was abundant. So think about it. Information was gold. If you were a lawyer, you knew the legal system. If you were a doctor, you knew the medical system. If you knew financials, you knew the financial system. Well, today, especially with the release of 5.0 of ChatGPT, you have PhD knowledge of all of those subjects at your fingertips. So we're in the age now of information abundance. ChatGPT gave the most intelligent artificial intelligence ever created of all human knowledge is for free for all users. So just think about that and how that's going to change the game. So when I go to buy something, I did this with my girlfriend was shopping for a Mercedes. And so we go to the dealer, and the dealer tells us the price of the car. And so I asked for all the documents. I listened to everything that he says. And literally, I loaded up into ChatGPT. I explained to them what I'm doing and how I'm negotiating with the dealer. And these are the documents, and these are the prices, and these are the terms. And knowing as an expert, which it is, what they're able to do and what's the best deal I can cut, give me that recommendation and tell me how to negotiate it. And we got her by far the best deal for this Mercedes that anybody's ever gotten, because you can't get better, because we were informed. And I've used that same process for medical issues that I've had in my family, or problems that we had, and we all have. So what does that mean? It means the buyer, whatever you're looking for, is so well educated today. They've already talked to an expert in a lot of times, the digital expert, and now you're selling them. So we have to understand, when you're entering that decision maker in that conversation, it's going to be a lot different than they're coming from ground zero. They're coming in at almost peer level at that point. Barbara, what do you think about that? And what do you think about the process that Skender was talking about in terms of information now rolling up to a central decision maker, and how are they using that information to make those centralized decisions?
Yeah, one other thing that Skender had said before was decisions are being made before we even know and make an interaction with what it is online, or an actual person in a manufacturer supplier situation. And that's really true depending on how mature the organizations are and how they've adopted this centralized sort of decision-making process. And value analysis helps to facilitate all that, because you just bring in all the people and things. So I was at a conference the last few days, got home just on Wednesday night, and a friend of mine, we teach courses, value analysis. Most people we've had in this course in a long time, most of them have not been in their positions longer than a year, and they were very engaged, because that's the way we're doing business today. And the reason why that is we're co-opting data, whether it's through an AI internal process or whatever. So we're really looking at, where are gaps that we need to fill? Where are we not getting, revenue? Where are we not getting outcomes? Where are we not doing as well? Where do we need to shore up gaps? So we're already developing what we want or need to do those things to make it better. So I agree with this sort of centralized approach. And we would go on, even before I retired, we'd go on Google and try to find everything. So when I'm talking to a client, I always say, make sure your website and other public information is as easy to find and update as possible, because if we can't find things, we're going to move on. So I agree.
I'd like to piggyback that, because I think that, if you're looking for people to find you, that's a problem, right? Because people don't have the time to do the all this research, right? So even like if you use AI or you use a Google search and you put in like, I'm in the need for a new dialysis machine, or I'm in the need for a new MRI, what's going to come up? It's going to be, right, AI or Google is going to aggregate the top three, right? You're going to get Siemens, you're going to get GE, you're going to get the top things, right? If you're a small startup, you're not getting in the conversation. So that's where, Scott, what you do comes in is so important, because you have to meet them on terms that they want to be met at in a non-salesy way, right? You have to just provide your representation and your authority position, and have them and meet them where they're at, as opposed to have them find you. Scott, what do you think about that?
I totally agree. Just a quick little plug. Literally 10 minutes before we got on the call, we posted a blog post from Gyrus Marketing about the RFP process. And it kind of goes back to exactly what we're talking about, where at the end of the day, like these buying processes don't just happen in an instant. They're literally made over years, right? You got a value analysis committee leadership, like what Barbara has been doing, is engaging with supply chain and clinical and that sort of thing. And it's one of those things where if you take advantage of the natural cadence of how a health system, an organization buys products like yours, you're going to win at a higher rate, right? You need to get good information out. You need to be thinking about how do you change the way that they view the category, the problem that you're solving, and do all these things years before that RFP is going to come out, so that when the RFP actually comes out, you've changed the way that they view the problem. And I think, Mike, to your question, the thing that we're seeing is it doesn't take massive budgets to do these kinds of things. Because again, at the end of the day, if we there's 5,000, 6,000 hospitals in the United States. Let's say that we're going after CIOs as our target audience. There's only 5,000 to 6,000 CIOs in the entire market. So you're not having to convince 330 million Americans to buy Coke. You're convincing 5,000 to 6,000 human beings that you are at least worth considering in the buying process. So that's the paradigm shift that I think we're seeing more and more is, to the point, Skender, that you had earlier, it's about centralization of some of these things and being more cognizant of what's going on in terms of how do these people think about things.
And you had a statistic on that before, Scott, that you shared with us in pre-production.
Yeah.
Tell us about the buying decision-making process. How does that?
Yeah. So this is not specific to like medtech, but this is broadly in business, B2B decisions. 70% of the research is done before ever contacting the company. So 70% of it is done. You're in or out in that buying process as a manufacturer long before you even know that St. Somewhere is interested in what you're doing.
So your biases are also being developed along with that research.
Totally. Yeah.
Correct. Right.
Yep.
Yeah. So, if you're not in the research, you're not in the conversation.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
Exactly. Or if the research is slanted in any particular direction, right, there's going to be a challenge to that.
Yep.
Well, and the research, it's certainly going to be slanted. Somebody's paying for the advertising, and for those of us who are really on top of AI, we need to figure out how AI is making those recommendations, because there's going to be some mechanism that's going to recommend somebody over another. Yep. That being said, whatever you think of Donald Trump, and I know that's a polarizing topic right now, but the one thing that he taught all of us was if you go direct to the market, you bypass the media and you go right to the people in your audience, you can really get your message across to the audience that's looking for it. So that being said, the fact, Scott, to your point about there are 5,000 of these and 2,000 of these decisions, we have finite universes. So that's a very good thing, but it's also very challenging, because number one is, you should be connected with those people so now they can see your content. But let's also talk about content, and let's talk about where content now is all shit. I mean, really, it's so horrible, and AI made it worse.
Yes.
AI people are literally just saying, write my blog post about inside sales or MRIs or whatever your topic is, and you're having a machine spit out. It looks generic. It is generic. And I think somebody said that right now, 80% of all the content that's that we're all looking at is AI generated.
Yeah.
So if you're just posting generic crap and there's no real impact that content is doing, you're actually hurting your reputation. So digital is something that is free in a lot of cases, right? You get LinkedIn and you connect for free and you can influence people free. But the hard part is the content creation that's really going to get your audience to capture their attention.
Just to build on that, Mike, because we spend a lot of time on content. I mean, here's the reality is you have subject matter experts in your business. Whatever business you're in, you've got somebody who has a unique perspective on whatever problem you solve. And so really what you want to think about is how do you get that person's thoughts into I was going to say disseminable, but content that you can send out. Skender started with a big word, so I gotta try and catch up. Yeah, I've crushing it in there several times. But you have an expert, so just figure out how do you go about just getting them to pontificate on the why MRIs today are bad and how we're better. And then that becomes valuable content. You don't want to be using generative AI like your chat GPTs to do that because it's trash, just to your point, Mike. But if you get real unique perspectives, that's what people want. And those are the kinds of things that get traction on these kinds of platforms. The other thing, you were going to say something.
Unique is a unicorn today in so many ways, right? It is. And that is what I think that the challenge that everybody is falling into, per what Mike is saying, is everything has become noise and generic. You really have to strive to be different. If you were saying, oh, everybody else is doing blog posts, so I'm going to do a blog post, you're just adding to the noise, right? Barbara, as you and your brethren are looking at different information, how do you distill?
You have to cut through that chaos. I heard it over and over again over the last few weeks. You have to cut through that chaos then to get to value, because that's what we're all in this for, is how do we get to value on either side so that you can meet somewhere and then make healthcare better? That's my mantra. So you have to learn how to cut through that. And I'm really enamored of these market reviews that you can get these days that really give you these projections over time, and they give you all of the players and what they sort of do. And so I have little subscriptions here and there. And it's really valuable to kind of get your mind around, say, a category and get it kind of straightened out. So you're not just shooting from your viewpoint, whether you work for a company or you're using devices. You have to clear your mind so that you can make the appropriate decision for whatever your situation is.
One of the things, sorry, I realize I'm talking a lot, but I like this topic. We all are, all the listeners work for a medical device company or some related industry. And, the reality is, we struggle with what's valuable content. And at the end of the day, we have what's called the curse of knowledge. So much about your business that to you, it's like, well, obviously that you would do X, Y, Z. Everybody knows that. No, the 216 people working in your company know that. The rest of the world doesn't. So that's valuable content when it's actually thoughtful and viewed from the perspective of your customer or your audience. And, when it comes to content, we hear all the time, oh, we don't have anything interesting. And it's like, well, then why did you even start a company in this space? Right? If you don't have anything interesting to do, why are you doing this? Just go home and go eat ice cream. There's a better use of your time, but you have a unique perspective. And that's the thing that comes out. And then the last thing, and I'll, kick it over to y'all. We have a client of ours, I won't say who it was, but, they've been doing some marketing for a while. And one of the founders was like, everybody knows who we are in their specifically the geographical area. They're here in the US. They're like, everyone knows who we are. And then one of the other co-founders, who I know well, was out in a space and was talking to customers and we have no idea who you are. You have a really cool product. And it's like, so I will tell you, I guarantee you, nobody knows you as well as you think that they do. And so one of the things you want to think about is that's a positive or that's a negative in that you have ground to make up in terms of being known in that buying process that's happening, whether you know it or not. And so that's the downside, is people don't know that you exist. The other side is you can create the reality that people think about when they think of you, right? And the way you do that is not to be a me too. It's, to your point, Mike, how do you go about building up a unique perspective on the problem you're solving for, so that when people see it, they're like, these guys have it figured out. And that's not going to be the entire market. It's not going to be all 5,000 hospitals. That'll be like, yes, the way you're approaching sanitation of med waste is the right way to do it. No, you'll have some people who do that and some people will disagree with you. But you've made people that are going to be advocates for you in those folks that agree with you. So to me, that's the biggest thing.
I want to build on that because I think it's so funny that you reference that. The idea of assumptions, and we
Mhm.
all work on these assumptions, right? Is the idea of everybody knows me, nobody knows me, right? That kind of dynamic. And we hosted an ad board a couple weeks ago for a client. And in this ad board, it was made up of equal parts clinicians, equal parts supply chain, value analysis, supply chain, sorry. And we were sitting at a table, it was hosted in person. And the thing that was so mesmerizing to me is the clinicians there, these are accomplished, very well regarded. One was a physician, one was a highly decorated nurse, both very accomplished, studied, researched, um, uh, pioneers of their field. And just by happenstance, across from them were highly polished, highly experienced supply chain personnel, all working together to help this one client organization come up with the same goals of how do they showcase their value proposition, which is based on a not just a feature and benefit dynamic, but something very important and new to the industry. And it was interesting to see the physician and the nurse basically talking to the supply chain people, being like, how do I talk to you in my organ? I don't even know who you are. Now, they work for different organizations, but they were like, I don't understand. Why can't this company come to me and I bring it to you? I don't even know who those people are in my organization. Like, how do I come to you? How do I bring this to you? And how do I make you listen to me? Right. And conversely, supply chain people are saying, well, this is how you should come to me and let's have a discussion. But we all operate, and what I mean is MedTech operates under the assumption, again, that there's this cohesiveness between all the parts in the provider world, and they're all in some level of cahoots or in some level of connectivity together. But here were four people from two different sides of the world that were saying, I don't understand. Yet we market to them, we strategize to them as if they are synchronized at all times, right? And sometimes the organizations that do the best are the ones that dispel those assumptions and come to them and say, hey, let us be the bridge that brings you together. Let us help connect you, clinician, to the value analysis process, help you create that better story. Or value analysis will help you talk to the clinicians along what's important to you and how we can help go through that. That's where we're talking about. This centralized strategy needs to change from a decentralized approach.
Yeah, I always tell the suppliers, you need to be the educators in this. Yes. Is you listen and you educate and you bring people together. Most people I talk to it's about the culture of each organization that either prevents or excels in how you communicate, talk, and do business. And that makes a big difference.
Can we talk? You talk. You're muted though, but why don't you say something?
You're muted.
Oh, he's muted. His hand gestures were
I know.
scary.
The hand gestures are good though. So.
Yeah, thank you. I'm all over the place with this. So my question is this. Does every product and every piece of capital equipment go through value analysis? Or what products go through value analysis? And my follow-up question is, I've never run a company where we make a decision by a committee, right? Literally, somebody is responsible for the budget, somebody's responsible for the outcome, and so that person is going to be responsible for whatever decisions made. But that's my world. In the value analysis world, is it really a committee decision, or does it come down to the key stakeholders ultimately make the decision?
Barbara, before you answer that, just 1 second, here's a shameless plug. For Mike, for all your questions, as well as anybody else's questions relating to this matter, we are hosting a webinar on next Friday, August 15th, that will answer those exact questions. Barbara, don't give them too much information.
I'll give you a little teaser.
Keep them hungry.
Stay tuned. I'll give you a little teaser. We first talk about value analysis maturity in organizations. If you're at the lower end of maturity, you've just started or whatever, it's usually these new product requests, which are usually consumable, and it's pretty simple. As you move up to the maturity of that value analysis process team, the data, how it really all works, how it permutates in through the culture and organization, then you work on implantables, you work on purchase services, you work on waste reduction, you work on valet, you work on all this kind of stuff, because you're bringing a process to it by which you get people to a decision-making process. But you have those KOLs at the table. And that's what you have to know is, who are they? And that's why it's so important that your culture permeates through everything, and they want to come to the table and they want to work with you. So that's kind of a little long-winded but shortened answer, because we'll give more away next week.
Excellent. Mike, can you talk to how sales is changing? And this is maybe a whole nother topic, and we can make a 2-hour podcast about it. But we were talking before we started going about like how sales is changing in this environment as well. Do you want to maybe share some thoughts?
Yeah. So, I mean, the obvious is that it's a much more virtual sales process than ever before. Mm-hmm. The fact is that if you look at the typical, what you would call outside salesperson, I don't think exists anymore. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't think any salesperson in healthcare or medtech every day wakes up, carries a bag, and goes in and is knocking on doors anymore. And if they are doing that, it's absolutely ridiculous to think that, and even it was ridiculous before, but if people are walking around the hospital trying to find the decision maker to have a conversation is so a ridiculous use of time and so on and so forth. So the bottom line is it has changed, and it's changed because it's more efficient to break the sales process down in what I always call 3 different places, right? So I call it the creator, the authority, and the lover. So the creator is the person that creates the opportunity. That's your inside salesperson who is paid to find the key opinion leaders or the decision makers, and that are absolutely going to be interested in the subject that they're going to be talking about, and to secure a qualified appointment with that person. So that person's creating that meeting. The creator is also somebody like Scott, who will use digital media to get in front of digitally the buyer, and then the buyer sees the video or sees the content, raises his hand and says, I'm interested. That creates the opportunity. So we need a creator. Once we have that opportunity created, we need the authority. The authority to come in, who knows the competition, who knows the insurance laws, knows the way the procedures are done, and can clearly show why their situation, why their product or service is better than the competition. And then lastly, you need the lover. After you actually get them to buy, you need somebody like Skender's team to come in and teach everybody and make that conversion process a lot easier, and love the people that are going to be using the product and teach them the best way and support them going forward. So before, it used to be that one person did everything, right? You had to create the opportunity, close the opportunity, service the opportunity. What we're finding is companies that are really scaling have professionals that are great at each of those functions, because the dirty little secret in the past was the salespeople were only good typically at one. You're either a great hunter, but you really can't close and you don't love them, or you're a great closer, but you don't like to hunt, and then you just like to close, so you don't love them. And then you have people that just are customer service orientated, that just love people and love the service aspect, but that could never walk up to a stranger and ask for an appointment or anything like that. So we're using specialization with people's personalities, and you're getting winning formula that way.
Can I just jump in on this? Because I ran sourcing for a big hospital system, and we just on the conversion piece, like you're just talking about, Mike, about what like Skender and team do and that sort of thing. We chose not to go with interesting companies because we didn't believe they could actually drive a successful conversion, because it was like two reps and like, maybe a person who's going to come, like someone from finance is going to come in, like, and you look at that as somebody like Barbara, the role you were in, the role that I was in, it's like, I can't do that. I got 44 hospitals, right? Like that's crazy. And so I think I totally agree with everything you're saying. And I think you have greater specialization, and you have people that have expertise in areas that you couldn't get before, but now you can get it in a fractional basis. So, I see that and totally see the value of that. I would respond very well as the head of sourcing to somebody who came in and said, hey, we're going to convert your widgets, and we have a team of X number of people that are going to come in with a level of expertise that we might not be able to hire ourselves, but we can bring them in for a period of time. I think that's incredibly valuable.
Yeah, and we used to sort of go ahead.
No, please go ahead, Barbara.
I was going to say, we used to say, here's how the conversion's going to go. Mm-hmm. And they go, well, we don't do it that way, or we don't have people to do that. And I said, deal breaker. You need to go find them. And we need to help to go through what they're going to say to make sure that it follows our protocol for doing the care with your widget, et cetera. So we made those things happen.
I can't tell you, and this is a shameless plug, but I'm going to throw it in. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten a call, fortunately, from having a strong network, even within the GPO circles, how many times I've gotten a call from somebody at the GPO world who said, because now they start asking on the questionnaires, the RFI questionnaires, tell us about your conversion process. And many companies have entered us as their conversion arm. And so I've had people at the GPO level say, is that true? Or did they just look you up on the internet?
Wow.
Right? And so, yes, I've had to attest for a few. I think I had to deny one where I was like, I don't know.
When you said us, I thought you meant the company. And I'm going, no, Skender.
No, it was the company.
You don't know, really? It's a company? I just figure you're like Madonna with like the one name.
Well, yes, that happens. It does happen. Yes. I won't revert to any of her song material.
It's for the best.
I won't regale you. So I think coming back to, we've talked a lot about Darwin's theories here and how that's impacted our overall growth, our overall success, and the organization. Scott, I think you nailed it in so many which ways. One of the greatest advantages that have happened in just the overall evolution of B2B has been the dynamic of fractionality, right? And so we're talking about all these things, and I'm sure there's some organization somewhere that's saying, man, that is all great, and that's fantastic. Scott, you're talking about Medtronic, you're talking about Stryker, GE, Siemens, all of them can have all of these specialized people. But guess what? I run a $5 million sales organization, and I have one. Well, I think what Mike started this conversation out with being, and the fact that you have PhD level knowledge at your fingertips. It's only for 5 hours a day currently, Mike, just so you know.
Well, if you pay for it, you get more.
It's 5 hours. 5 hours, yes, if you pay. But that is a you problem, right? Yeah. The access to resources that any organization can unlock in a fractional capacity is more abundant today. Again, coming back to your concept, Mike, the abundance of information, the abundance of resources, the abundance of knowledge is more accessible to the average person than it's ever been before. So if you're a listener in our audience and you're like, yeah, that's great for the Siemens. No, it's great for you too. Just, are you going to make that investment?
Yeah. And Skender, I'll just end Mike. I know we're running out of time, so these will be my closing comments.
Great.
So what I love about this environment, and what I've always loved about inside sales and digital, is it levels the playing field. Because skill matters. See, if I'm skilled at inside sales, then I can get to the decision maker. And then I can get that decision. And if I have a product that nobody knows about, but it's bringing better outcomes and better value, and I'm able to articulate that brief and brilliantly so I can get an appointment for my closer, right? I've equaled the playing field. And if I have great digital content that I'm landing in front of the decision maker, that's compelling enough to let them say, wow, I'm using the name brand, but this looks a lot more interesting, I've created the opportunity. And so the combination of inside sales with digital is going to absolutely build predictable, repeatable, and scalable models. And I'll give you an example that both Scott and I actually have a client right now that we're working with that is selling a revolutionary. It's the iPhone of dialysis machines. And so I just did it. I just put in AI while we were talking. I'm the chief nursing officer and head of dialysis for a 250 bed hospital, and I need to be purchasing new equipment this year. Give me a list of the top equipment that I should be looking at to make an evaluation and rank it in terms of which device has the best reviews and whatever. I put that into the prompt. The companies that came out, no surprise, are Fresenius, Baxter, Braun, Nipro, and Outset Medical. Okay. So that's 5 companies. Our client is not on that list. But our client, since we've been working with them, every week gets a consistent flow of qualified meetings. Our client is winning on the ground level. We converted our first sale within the first 60 days of engagement, and we have a pipeline worth millions of dollars that's coming up. And that's because Scott's putting the content out there, and we're synergizing the inside effort so that way when my folks are there, when we get them on the phone, they have some reference. They also get a good story from us. The company's got a great innovation, and that levels the playing field. So the message to the people listening is, if you have great inside sales, great digital, you've leveled the playing field, and a great implementation plan afterwards to make that conversion easy. And that's all I got to say about that.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
That's a great feedback. I love that.
Mm-hmm. I'll just echo. I'll go next. I think I agree with everything that Mike said. And yes, we're killing it for them. And it's been fantastic to see that kind of growth. And I think, if you think about an organization like Fresenius, or you think about DaVita, right, or other organizations, they're multi-billion-dollar companies. Our client is not that. Right? They have scrappy startup with an amazing technology, that sort of thing. And they're punching far above their weight class by taking advantage of far above their weight class, because they're taking advantage of what Mike has said. Like we've leveled, the playing field has been leveled for us in terms of, you don't have rep access and rep relationships at the point of decision like we did 15 years ago. And so now it's more about, how are you educating? How are you standing out? How are you reaching out and touching a select group of individuals? And there's a pipeline. Like you literally can't talk to those, CXOs at a hospital system, but only so much in a day. And so if you figure out how to get in front of them on a consistent basis, you're boxing out your competitors. So I just think we really are at an inflection point in how businesses can operate, whether it's having expertise like you could never afford to hire, that through what we see with 5.0, how you're reaching out, and ultimately how you're structuring a business to be a 21st century business as opposed to a 20th century business. I think it's a transformational moment for our industry.
Great. Barbara.
So my final points are the speed to value. And I'm talking about for patients and organizations as well as suppliers, because I'm one of these, look at it very ethically. If there is a product or a piece of equipment or something out there that's going to make my patients better, sooner, out of the hospital, whatever it is, I need to know about it as quickly as possible. So when you've got the clinical, financial, and operational all aligned, I got to get that speed to value, because I'm not doing that if I'm not implementing implementing it as soon as a decision is made as possible and safely as possible, because then my organization and my patients and the community is winning every day.
I think it's an excellent point. I think the key thing for our audience is, Scott, you were making a point, and one of the things that I was thinking about is I hear a lot of small companies and people who started small companies throughout the dawn of time, and they talk about how it was so much easier back then because I could have a rep get accessibility, and we could get a few orders on the books pretty quickly, and then grow from there. And now I just can't do it the same way. But at the same token, you were just putting together a bunch of table scraps before.
Mhm.
Now
Yep.
you have an opportunity because of the accessibility of information, resources, knowledge that didn't exist before. You have an opportunity to get a seat at the table,
Mhm.
right? What you guys just talked about, those are 5 pretty big companies. All of them, I believe, are publicly traded, including Outset Medical, right?
Mhm. Yep.
So they're all 5 publicly traded companies that are Nipro, I think, is traded in Japan.
It is Japanese. Yep.
But so they're all publicly traded somewhere, and you've got a company that's able to get a seat at the table. So for all those companies that are like, we used to get table scraps, I used to be able to convince one surgeon to buy a few and another surgeon to buy a few, and before I know it, I had a few orders. Yeah, but you had a few orders. That's what you really had.
Can I just? I know it's time to be done, but you just brought something up that I think is critical. It used to be that I could go hire reps with a Rolodex.
Yes.
And they could go and they could
Correct.
just get me endorsed. Those people have retired.
Yes.
On both sides, the reps and the doctors that they have those relationships with. So it's really about, you have to build a system as opposed to hiring some sort of all-star who's got that background.
The system, it's the process. It's the ability to get a seat at the table today that is available to us all. It's just dependent upon how you want to approach it. So hopefully everybody's taking that away. We are moving to a system-based rather than a person-based type of environment. AI is coming for us all. Be scared, be nervous. Schwarzenegger won't be there to save us, or he might be there to kill us. I don't know. We'll find out within a matter of time. Either which way, before that happens, I encourage everybody to join our Value Analysis Expert Series webinar. It's a special webinar that we're hosting next Friday, where Barbara and her Value Analysis Expert team is going to be there, providing insight and information and take us away from the tree bark that so many of us are just inflicted with looking at, to really seeing the whole forest viewpoint. Because if you are going to create a system and a process, you better be able to see that forest and not just the tree. So please join us next Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern, August 15th. Highly encourage everybody to join. There will be a question and answer segment towards the end. So if you've been having pressing questions, Mike Sperduti, that you'd like answered, that's the time to ask it.
I am definitely joining. You can count on me being there.
We are excited to have you there. So thank you, everybody, once again for your attention. We appreciate everybody's time, and hope you take some great information out of this. Looking forward to seeing everybody on Friday. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.